Next, please welcome to the stage the Managing Partner at Q. Engineering, Montgomery County Fire Marshal and Plumas Incorporated Chairman, Rick Merck.
Well, hello. What a great dynamic day so far. Thank you so much for the invite to be here. My name is Rick Merck. I'm the chairman of a company called Plumas, another UK company, okay, from this morning. We're here in the US also. Just a little bit about my background. I'm also a fire protection engineer and a forensic engineer for fire and electrical failures. And so I'm here to kind of give you an alternative view on a fire suppression system, which is kind of going gangbusters over in the UK, but we're going to take a look at it here in the US also. So we're a very smart, innovative alternative to sprinklers. And I have Mike Gelinas is with me today in case you want to talk a little bit about this. This is the system. We have a little mock-up down here for you to take a look at. Everybody wants to see exactly what is a part of that system. So this is how we got started, again over in the UK. Imperial College of London, a bunch of grad students were looking at trying to solve problems. They went to the London Fire Brigade and they sat down and said, what's your biggest problem? They basically said, we need to retrofit into existing places and our biggest issue is cooking fires. And so with that knowledge and spending lots and lots of time, this group, these two individuals, Yusuf is still with the company, and they designed a system that is easily retrofittable and works off of the domestic water and is an automatic kind of suppression system just for the kitchen. As you see it right there, it goes right underneath the sink. And for that design, they actually won the Dyson Award for engineering. And so that launched the company. 10 years later, we have our third edition of the system. The company has grown, and in 2016, we won the Red Dot Award for Engineering Excellence. The year before, Best of Best. Best of Best was the Apple Watch the year before. So, what is this? I'm going to just run this, hopefully, if you can run it while I talk. We're not going to listen. You can mute that if you would.
Auto Miss Smartscape.
So, as you see here, we are doing some fire testing. We're talking about what's happening. This system basically is wall mounted. It scans the room looking for the fire once it is turned on by the smoke detection system. Once it sees the fire, it points directly at the fire and puts all the water right on the fire. It uses 1/10 of the sprinkler system water. It hooks up to the domestic water system and the normal electrical system from the house or apartment. So this is a rendering of what the system looks like. There's a pump unit in the black part. There's a control unit, and then the head would be wall mounted, typically around where you would have electrical light switches. That's exactly where the head would go. The pump box is approximately the size of a desktop computer. That includes the pump itself, and then the controller is separate from that. So this is a pre-engineered dry pipe water mist system. Pre-engineered means we've already done the engineering for it. We are able to put this, and it will cover a radius of about 20 feet for each head. So if you have a larger space to fill, you put a second head in. Dry pipe means that the water is not in the hose. The water comes up to the pump, and that's where it stops. There's a double valve in the pump system so that there's no water that goes by and no water can come back. Goes through the high pressure pump when needed. So when the detector goes off, it turns the system on. The system will scan the room. If the system sees a fire, then it will point to the fire, have the pump turn on, and put water mist on the pump, on the fire. In some testing, I had the opportunity to work with one of my students from Executive Fire Officer program in National Fire Academy. And he is out in the St. Louis area. And so he had a old 70s version hotel that they were tearing down, asked us to come back out to do some fire testing. We brought this system out there. We had multiple rooms that were exactly the same with all the old furniture. So we were able to actually do some testing and gather the data, and we had no suppression in a room. We had sprinkler to code in the room, and we had auto mist system. Bless you. What you can see here is, the only reason I'm showing this is because of our system and how we are activated, we're actually hitting the fire much earlier in the time frame. So the fire is smaller and more easily handled. So that's all I need you to take from that. The thing that the insurance folks were amazed at is this was a chair fire that a sprinkler basically controlled perfectly and put out. This is also was controlled perfectly and put out by auto mist, and that was the damage that was left. And I would defy you to come up and take a look to see where most of the damage is, because it was so early that it typically works very, very quickly. So this is how this works. We all remember a concept of Archimedes. We're not going to go into too much fire dynamics and physics today, although I would love to talk with my fellow fire protection engineer about it. The whole concept here is a sprinkler head is up on the top of this depiction here. That's where the hot layer is. That's what we've been talking about. That is how sprinkler heads actually deploy. It gets hot, it either breaks a bulb or some other mechanism, and then the water flows from the pipe through that. It tends to be a large droplet. It has a lot of mass. It comes down through and wets an area of the floor. There are some losses, obviously, if it's going through all the heat, it's water, it's cooling that upper layer. That's a good thing, and the rest of it comes down and goes to the fire. When we're talking about water mist, the mist molecule is very, very small. And so it doesn't have very much momentum after it leaves the nozzle, and so it moves around on the air currents that are in the room. The air currents actually come into where the fire is. It's called entrainment, and it comes into the base of the fire. And the water molecule is brought into the fire by the air molecule, or by the air vents and the entrainment that's coming in. And so it actually helps. It cools the fire, puts the flaming fire out, and actually, through the expansion, eliminates the oxygen for the flaming fire. So this is basically how we are a little bit different. By the way, we are big proponents of the sprinkler systems. I designed sprinkler systems. We want sprinkler systems everywhere. But we believe that there are alternatives, and sometimes you need to have something else in your toolbox. And so this is how a sprinkler system basically works. Just nominally, it's a 10 by 10 square on the floor. We're looking at from the ceiling down to the floor. Sprinkler head in the center. And when a fire starts, it's going to start in basically one of those squares. When the sprinkler head goes off, it's designed to put a certain amount of water in every one of those squares. Okay, so that's the density. And so we're going to cover that floor to be able to control or extinguish that fire. The approach that we took was the same fire, but what we do is try to target the fire. We put all the water then directly on the location of the fire, and we put it in a fan, a vertical fan, so that we're cooling all the gases that are going up and also bringing all the water mist to the base of the fire. So how do we work? Basically, we use a multi-sensor detector, and so that is going to be a photoelectric smoke alarm, plus a heat detector, which is both fixed temperature at 135 degrees, which is standard in the industry, and a rate of rise. Why do we do that? Because you have different kinds of fires, especially in the residential world. You may have a smoldering fire, or you may have a pretty aggressive fire. Both of those sensors take into account both of those issues. The head begins to scan the room, looking for the fire. It'll scan until it identifies the fire. or the alarm clears. So if it does not see what fire is and the alarm clears, it will go back into the standby mode and not disperse water mist. When we look, we're looking at the room from the perspective of infrared. So here's a fire, it's in the corner. This is from one of our test cells again. And what we really are looking at is the lower picture there, and that is the infrared picture. So as a sprinkler alternative, most people say, Rick, I've never heard of this before. Is it okay? You know, how can we approve this? Well, in the most recent, or the 2015 building code, and I'm not saying that that's here in New York City. I'm just saying that it's the international building code that is out there from ICC. There's a new section that is 904 for alternative fire extinguishing systems, and 904.11 is actually for water mist now. So they do recognize the fact that it is. Basically, there's a lot of code issues that we're not going to go through the code, but the code issue basically says, hey, if you're going to put water mist in, there's a standard for water mist, and it's called NFPA 750. So NFPA 750 is water mist fire protection systems. And basically, we talked just a little bit before about prescriptive codes in the UK and performance codes. So the earlier codes that you looked at for the lighting is a performance-based code. NFPA 750 is also a performance-based code. And so we look at fire from a performance measure under water mist. We have two basic concepts that we deal with: a hazard mitigation or hazard reduction concept and a code compliant concept. The first one being, hey, we have a lot of cooking fires. How can we put a suppression system in for as little money as we possibly can? We don't have the ability to or desire to retrofit the entire flat or apartment, but we need some hazard reduction for what we perceive to be the highest hazard. And that would be the kitchen hazard reduction system. The Smart Scan Hydra is the code compliant system, and it is hazard reduction and is good for any retrofit, but especially in basements. So hazard reduction, we look at kitchen stoves, ovens, microwaves, clothes dryers, and protecting those specifically if that's needed. This is a kitchen setup. Basically, we can put the pump under the counter. We have water and electric typically there, and the system sits right up. That's what it looks like on the counter. It will function off of the detector again, and then fill that area where the kitchen fires typically occur with water mist. Thank you. I'll just show this really. I wasn't finished yet, I'm sorry.
Oh.
I was saying thank you for the video. Unless you're pulling me off. So you're saying there's oh, you have to restart?
This short video shows Automist extinguishing a small kitchen fire. The Automist head unit has been discreetly installed under the kitchen tap, and the pump is hidden away under the sink.
That's fine, you can stop it. I just wanted.
Once triggered, either automatically by a heat alarm
Could you stop
or
it?
manually, Automist uses mains water.
So that is actually one of my partner's kitchen while his wife was away. And that's how he did that.
We tried to get permission to set a fire in here, but we didn't think Chief Buckeye would come if we.
So we have started installing these systems here in the U.S. We have museums, we have wedding venues. This was a museum in York, Pennsylvania, part of the Underground Railroad. This is a very special issue. It was a house, so it has all the old house attributes. Of course, they wanted it to be a museum, so it needed to be sprinkled. All the things that they wanted to show in the museum were not allowed to be in a sprinkled property. And so therefore, there was a conundrum. They asked about the water mist system, and the water mist system was approved by the insurers, and it sits there now as an operating museum. Wedding venues in places like Maryland and West Virginia and places that around, they have farms and barns. They want to use the barn for something new, like a wedding venue, brewery, lots of different reasons. And in the state of Maryland, it's been decided that that is a change of use that would become an assembly, and you need to sprinkle this. There's no water, obviously, and so they've been able to put water mist in. So current progress, I get this question every time, so I go ahead and build it right into my presentations. Are you UL listed? Okay, that we always get that question. So my counter to that is we are listed. We are not UL listed yet. We're currently in the process. We've been accepted into their listing process. They have accepted all our testing and testing certificates. So we have been tested and listed for water mist systems and for sprinkler systems. So we meet all of those things. UL's position is, but you do so much more, we have to write a new test. And so we're in the process of having that new test being created. And we should be going into fire testing in May of this year.
I'm sorry to interrupt, only because I have to leave and I
Sure.
want to ask you a question before I do. So in New York City, we currently have the 2009 IEC with local amendments, but it has a provision in 904 to permit water mist systems in accordance with the fire code. And the New York City Fire Code was amended to allow it in accordance with NFPA 750 if these people say it's okay, right? So my question is, this smart scan system, if you look at NFPA 750 and understanding that your particular system isn't listed is not really my question, is a smart scan type system that looks for the fire rather than just puts water mist everywhere, something which as of right qualifies and satisfies NFPA 750 and can therefore satisfy the 2015 IBC?
If I said that, I misspoke. We are listed.
Okay.
We have passed the sprinkler and the water mist, so we are compliant with
So
NFPA 750.
your device works, and the listing you're trying to get is for a whole system with those computer systems and the wires?
Well, our whole system has been listed,
Okay.
but not with UL, because UL is a very particular
No,
standard.
I know UL's people in
Right.
California, they're very tough. I get that. So my question is, do you need that UL listing to satisfy 750 in order to satisfy code officials that you
Right.
comply with 750, therefore the fire code, therefore BC 904?
Yes, it points to a UL 2167 fire test,
Okay.
which we did, and UL has accepted that we passed that.
Okay, I'm not sure I got my answer,
So,
but it's okay.
so yes, we are NFPA. We can be compliant with NFPA 750.
That was my question. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. And
As a scan. And then one other question, what happened, so if you put this in a basement of a house, whether it's a, Underground Railroad or just a house in parts of Brooklyn in a basement, I'm assuming there's got to be some kind of backup power system, and we're not talking about an office building or hotel that has a generator. What do you do for that?
when backup power is required, we are able to supply it through battery
Right.
backup.
In compliance with 750 and everything else, it doesn't?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
sure. We are in a multi-head environment now in the Hydra. So where we used to be one pump and one head, now we're able to be one pump and 6 heads, which allows us to pretty much take care of a flat or a small apartment kind of situation. Again, very, very smart, very forward-looking into IoT kinds of things. And so we're a pre-engineered dry pipe system, multiple scan heads, up to 6, very easy to retrofit. And it requires domestic water only, and it's tested and approved for code compliance for NFPA 750 through UL 2167. I talked about all of those, and we'll just skip past that. I will take some questions.
Hey, sprinklers are great, and mist systems are even greater, so looks like fantastic stuff. My only thing that I can think that would be negative is we often trade some other passive fire protection measure for some active fire protection measure. And then one of the components of that active fire protection measure fails, and we're left with, you know, a debacle. So that's the only thing I would be concerned about is, say, you know, someday cellar occupancy is legal in New York, and they say, yeah, we'll just put these mist systems in, and then is there backup power supply? Is the wiring fire rated, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it looks like dynamite stuff, but that would be my only worry, that we're gonna see this trading and bartering of other passive or kind of known fire protection measures for something like this. But it looks really promising.
Well, thank you. And certainly all the attributes of what you were talking about are talked about locally in jurisdictions, and all of those can typically be met. We haven't been able to not be able to meet those. I will tell you that in the code writing process, that same concept of give-backs or trade-offs was discussed, and they actually wrote it in the code that you cannot use any of those trade-offs in the building code. So yes, you can put water mist in. It could be your suppression system, but you don't get to have higher, bigger, less passive fire protection.
And we also, you know, we have a regulatory process. So a space like this, every year, come in, test the suppression system, witness monthly, you know, in-house testing, so forth. These will be in private dwellings or smaller occupancies. It'd be really hard to make sure that they're still working.
Yes.
So it's a code, you know, problem for us, you know.
Yes, and that is also indicative of 13D systems. It's exactly the same thing. In NFPA 25, which covers testing and maintenance, there is a new water mist system section of that too. So, but you're absolutely right, in single-family dwellings, and if people do not maintain them, it's just like anything else. Yes, sir.
Can you describe what's required to maintain them and test them?
Yes, we actually have a maintenance contract, or can have a maintenance contract. It's part of the warranty also that it is tested, and it's code required under NFPA 25 or 13. Basically, it is recommissioned again, so we make sure that every part works, functions, and then it's put back into standby mode
And how frequently does that need to be done?
once a year.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.